Lights, camera, action.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to be talking about Scary Movie or Scary Movie 6, whatever it's called. So the day has finally come for the brand new parody movie that we've long waited for, where the Wayans brothers finally got their franchise back. And, for the last couple of years, they've been teasing about how this is going to be, their comeback comedy, and it's really going to cross all these boundaries and lines. And does it? Well, we're going to discuss that. So this is a franchise that I actually really enjoy. I love the first two, the first one especially. The first one will always be my favorite. I don't think that one can ever be topped. But I'm not one of those people that really dislike 3 or 4 as well. I was kind of like a kid when 3 or 4 came out, so I saw 3 and 4 in the theater, probably way too young. So I think that's why I have a soft, nostalgic spot for them, because I didn't know about all the stuff going on with the Wayans brothers and how they had the franchise taken away from them, all that stuff. I didn't know any of that, so I just enjoyed it for what it was. 5 is the only one for me that I'm kind of like, nah, that one's just not good at all. I'm just not a fan of that one whatsoever. So I was very much looking forward to this one and what it was going to bring and everything that it was going to tell. So I have to say I enjoyed this movie, but I did have some issues with it. Now, this is kind of a hard movie to really talk about and review because it's a parody movie, so it's kind of hard to really kind of go for the things I normally talk about in a review, like talking about cinematography and lighting and music and things like that, just don't really fit for a movie like this. So I'm going to do my best to really talk about some of the stuff that I really enjoyed about it and then get into my mixed and negatives. Like, I'm going to try to stick to what I do. So starting out with some positives, I like the fact that we got pretty much the entire crew back. I love the fact that pretty much these core 4 characters, I love the fact that they're back. I love the fact that, they're here, and a lot of them felt like they never really missed a beat. And, it felt like they really kind of fell right back into these characters. And it's like they never really left the role. So I enjoyed that about it, especially like Anna Faris and Marlon Wayans. I feel like the two of them really fell back into their roles like they never left. With Regina Hall and Sean Wayans, I feel like they did as well. But I have a little bit more to say about them later on. But for the most part, I just loved how all these characters just fell back into their place. Like they just never really missed a beat. It really felt like they cared about coming back to this, and they really wanted to see it successful, and they really put a lot of effort into it. At least it did. It felt that way for 2 of the characters. One of the other positives I have is the actress that played Cindy's daughter, Olivia Rose Keegan, I think is her name. I thought she did a really good job of really mimicking that same style that Anna Faris had. I really believed that could be her daughter, so I really enjoyed that dynamic about it. So I thought she did a really good job, and as being one of the new members of this cast, I thought she had some pretty funny scenes as well. I'm actually a huge fan of, the movies that they are actually spoofing in this movie, so I was really looking forward to how they were going to go about spoofing certain movies, and I really liked the take that they had on certain movies and a lot of gags that they had throughout it. There's a lot of background gags throughout this movie that I feel like you won't catch, the first time you watch it, so it's one of those movies you kind of have to watch 2 or 3 times, in the same vein as like something like The Naked Gun or Airplane, for example. There's so many background jokes. Obviously, movies like The Naked Gun and Airplane are superior to this movie. I'm just giving an example, but there's a lot of those background jokes, like especially in the beginning. There's a whole scene that I thought was funny where they're doing like this spoof on Scream 5, for example. And, they're working at this amusement park, and the rides that are going on in the background, I thought that was really funny. And it's also in the same vein that this is one of those movies where it's really like a joke a mile a minute. Like, there's so many jokes that are coming at you all at once that it's kind of hard to really, if you're laughing really big at one joke, it'll be really hard to hear the next one. So it really does remerit that rewatch. And I'll be completely honest with you, this movie really hinges on what type of humor that you have. Like, it's completely subjective. The same way with horror movies. People can find a lot of stuff scary that a lot of other people don't. Same way with comedy. A lot of people can really go and enjoy themselves and laugh their ass off at a movie like this, and then there's a whole other side that just don't find it funny at all. And it's all subjective, so it all really depends on your humor. For me, I have a very dark, twisted sense of humor, and really I have a lot of love for these movies and this style of humor, especially like the first one. Like, there's so many jokes that are in these first couple movies that you can just not do, nowadays because of, where we are with society and all that stuff. And honestly, for me, the humor that is in these style of movies like this, or Saving Silverman, or The Hangover even, so, most recently, or Tropic Thunder, or the American Pie movies, That's the type of humor that I miss that we do not get anymore. So I was really excited for this movie because I was hoping it was going to bring comedy back to that. I'm not saying I was, expecting this movie to completely bring comedy back to that with, all the weight of the world on this movie. But I was hoping it would point it in the right direction and get us started, get the wheels turning on that to get us back in that route of comedy again. I know that type of comedy is really, by today's standards, outdated and people don't like it and they kind of turn their nose up at it. But like I said, for me, that is my style of comedy. I'm sorry, stuff like that really makes me laugh. And I don't feel like that makes me a bad person because it makes me laugh. I'm sorry. But I do like the fact that in this movie, they do kind of go for those jokes that are not, politically correct nowadays. It's a lot of stuff that I feel like they couldn't say or do. And there is some of that in my negative as well that I get into. But they do, go that route of not holding back on what they want to say and the jokes that they want to tell. And they really go for it. And they do it in a way where it doesn't feel like it's singling out one person in particular. They're really like they were in the originals. Really, everybody's up for grabs. They can kind of really just go for the humor for everybody, make fun of everybody and everything. And I feel like that's something we need right now. Plus, I went to go see this with a friend of mine, and these type of movies for him is just like the same as mine. It's right up his alley. So really, honestly, kind of being with him in the theater, watching him laugh and get a kick out of it. And my whole theater was like erupting in laughter pretty much through the entire movie. So I think that probably has a big effect on me to where if I'd seen this movie by myself and maybe if the theater wasn't so lively, I wouldn't have felt the same way. But because I had that experience, it probably heightened it for me. But even though I had a good time with it, there's a lot of stuff that I could easily see people not liking at all and just thinking that that was stupid and low-hanging fruit jokes. And I totally understand that. There were certain parts in this movie that for me really worked that I was actually really laughing and like almost hunched over laughing at that I thought was really funny. And like I said, that could have been an effect on my friend laughing as well in the theater. But it's the same way with any comedy. There's some movies, for example, that will work all the way through the movie. The jokes will land, and there's others that are very up and down, and there's others that just miss altogether. And like I said, depending on where you land or your type of humor is, I can totally see this movie going in either direction for you. So like I said, this movie is very hard to talk about because it's not really a traditional movie. So with all that being said, some of the stuff that I was mixed about, and I'll put this in the mixed category because I still did find some of it funny. Some of the movies that they parodied in this movie, I don't understand why it was there. It really served no purpose to the overall narrative of the story, which is just stupid to say anyway because, again, it's a spoof comedy, so what are you going to do with that? But, like, for example, like, Longlegs, you could have taken that whole, thing out of the movie and it would have, taken away nothing from the movie. Same with the Terrifier sequence. And really, the whole thing with Regina Hall's character, where she's playing Ma from that movie, I don't remember what year it came out, but the Blumhouse movie. But her character really does nothing with that. She makes like one or two references here or there to that character and maybe to the movie. But other than that, there's really nothing there that really drove the story forward or really kind of added anything to it where, other parody things that they were trying to do in the movie. For example, like something like The Substance, which they're parodying in this movie, that kind of had something to do with our legacy characters and kind of tied into all that story-wise. So that I can understand. But for the most part, like I said, even though I found some of those sequences funny, they just weren't really needed. I think it was kind of there maybe really to pad the runtime, and it's just a movie that they wanted to make fun of, which I totally understand. But for the most part, they really weren't needed. And moving on to the negatives, I will have to say that for me, even though there is a lot of jokes in this movie and a lot of like references, I feel like a lot of these jokes were kind of undercooked in a way. I felt like they were really more passing references than they were actually jokes. Like they just kind of reference something or vice versa. They never really kind of, like the joke never really is fully cooked, if that makes any sense. Like I feel like there was a lot, maybe a build-up or just a punchline, but there was never like both or any in between, if that makes any sense. It's really hard to explain, but I just felt like for the most part, all of the jokes were more just passing references than anything else. But nevertheless, I still thought there was still stuff in here that was funny, that made me laugh, that worked for me. And one of the other negatives I had was that, they hyped this movie up so much of, oh, we're going to cross every line, every boundary, nothing is safe, and all that stuff. And while a part of that is true, they don't really ever really cross the line completely. It's really more of them dipping the toe in just to see what they could do with it. And it just didn't feel like they really went as far as they could have. Like I said, they don't hold back with a lot of things. But that goes back to the thing I just said about it's more of references, more of things in passing, more than it actually is a joke. Like I said, there is jokes, but I just feel like majority of it is more reference stuff. But like I said, even though that is the case, there is a lot of stuff in here that still made me laugh. So for me, a lot of that stuff still worked, but I can see a lot of that falling flat for a lot of people, just depending on who you are. So in that front, I don't feel like this movie really pushed a lot of boundaries. Like I said, I really felt like they still kind of played it safe by like kind of dipping their toe in the pond a little bit just to see what they could do. And maybe if we get something, maybe like another one or a second White Chicks or something like that, maybe then they'll feel a little bit more comfortable to kind of really go for things. But for the most part, I feel like they didn't really go as far as they, try to claim that they did, especially in the marketing. And another thing as well is that I feel like this movie, a lot of times it goes back to try to get us in that nostalgia feel and really feel those member berries. Because there's a lot of scenes that are they have a take on them from like the first movie or second movie, for example, that they kind of bring back and try to redo it. But it does not hit the same way as obviously as it did the first time. And I don't know, I just kind of wish they didn't. They're making fun of nostalgia in this movie while also making you feel nostalgic, which is a funny play on, I guess, but I just wish they didn't do as many callbacks as they did, because after a while you're kind of like, we get it, you're reminding us of another movie that, for me, I did like better, but I don't know, I just kind of wish they didn't do as many callbacks as they did, because they just didn't hit nearly as strong as, obviously as they were portrayed the first time around. And one of the other negatives I have is really our returning characters. Like I know I mentioned in my positive a second ago about how they're all together, but there was a few other ones that I felt like were just wasted. They weren't there at all. Like John Abrams, for example. He's really in this movie as a blink and you miss it. Like if you got up to pee, you're going to miss his whole sequence. Like he didn't come back at all. And it was funny because I saw him at Mad Monster back in February. Yeah, back in February. And I went to his panel where they were asking him about this movie, and he said he loved being back, and it's almost like he had a bigger part, and I don't know if a lot of his stuff got cut, but he's barely in this movie at all. And it's really the same with Lachlan Monroe. Like, he's in a little bit of a bigger part than it is with John Abrams, but for the most part, like, he's just, here for the first couple minutes, and that's it. So I know they made this big, huge thing about all the entire cast is back together and whatnot, but really those two characters are really kind of just gone. And there are a few other characters that are the same way. Thankfully, Doofy's character is more of a presence in this movie than I thought he was going to be. After seeing those two characters, I was kind of worried that Doofy's character was going to be like a real, blink and miss it type thing to him. Thankfully, that presence is a little bit more in this movie than I, thought it was going to be, so I'm grateful for that. But for a lot of these characters, like I said, they're just here and that's it. And it's like I mentioned before about Regina Hall and Shawn Wayans' characters, where I feel like even though they're great being back at these roles again, like they just feel like they just slid right back in these roles again, they're not in this movie a whole lot. Like I feel like this is more of Shorty's movie and Anna Faris's movie, which is fine, but I wanted more of those characters, because all four of them I feel like are really the core characters of this movie. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just how they were written into the movie, but their characters just weren't in here a lot, which is sad because I love Ray. I love the comedy that he brings to these movies and stuff. It's always stuff that makes me laugh. I mean, the one part in the trailer that made me laugh the most was why half gay, all that stuff or whatever. So I just really wish there was a little bit more of their characters in this movie. Like I said, I don't know if that was a creative thing or if it was just a writing thing, but I really kind of missed them and I really wanted more of them. But honestly, guys, that's really all I can really talk about with this review. It's so hard to talk about a spoof comedy because what can you really talk about other than it really made you laugh or it didn't? So it's really hard to kind of dive into all that. But for me, like I said, it depends on who you are, what you find funny. And trust me, believe me, I know this is not the smartest like humor or comedy that we've had. It's very low-hanging fruit, just dumb, turn your brain off humor. And I fully understand that. And like I said, a lot of it worked for me and a lot of it didn't. It's the same with any movie for me. There's a lot of strong points in this movie, but there's also a lot of really dead on arrival points to where just stuff didn't land at all. And people could feel the opposite. A lot of people could feel that the entire movie worked for them. Like I said, the people in my theater, they laughed their ass off the entire way through this movie. But I also went into this movie, knowing that my friend was coming along, and I kind of went into this movie, wanted to turn the critical side of my brain off and just sit back, and I wanted to laugh. I wanted to enjoy this movie. And even though I had issues with it, I did enjoy it, and there was a lot of parts that really worked for me and did make me laugh. So this is not by far my favorite parody movie or favorite scary movie. To me, nothing will ever beat the original. There's something just so great about the original. And it is hard to come back and do like legacy sequels or comedies 25 years later and really stick the landing. But I give him kudos for trying. I give him kudos for trying to do something. And like I said, it's just, if you just want to go to the theaters and hopefully laugh and just turn your brain off, this movie's for you. But just know your type of humor and just know who you are going in.
Do some half gay shit.
Why just half gay?
But thank you, everybody. That is my review for Scary Movie or Scary Movie 6, whatever they're calling it or whatever. I don't know. If you've seen the movie, please comment below and let me know what you thought about it, things that you liked or disliked, whether or not you laughed and had a good time with it or you just found it not funny at all. And what is your favorite scary movie out of the franchise? I'm very curious. And if this is a review that you're finding me on, please come over to the channel and check out all my other 2026 reviews so far. I'd love to have you over there. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That way I can see all of you in the next one. Thank you so very, very much.